welcome to or welcome back to Book and Prejudice. My name is Mar, and today I'm going to be talking about my all-time favorite fantasy books. Now, fantasy is my favorite genre to read. I feel like it always provides this warm cave of escapism where I feel like I can just leave the real world for a little while and go fight some quest or become a vampire or fight some weird demon. So I've always been very attracted to it as a genre ever since I was very young. I think, you know, I started reading properly when I was 6 or 7, and I'd say by age 8 I had already decided that fantasy was the books that I enjoyed the most. So this might be a bit of a longer video. I definitely recommend getting comfortable. Definitely would recommend, as always, making yourself a drink of your choice. Today we have a coffee, but this one's special because it has hazelnut syrup, because we haven't been able to find hazelnut syrup for a little while, and now that we have it, I'm enjoying it so much. And you know, let's get started with the video. Now, the first book that I'm going to talk about, I actually don't know it. It's in my mom's house because I read this book when I was 8, and this is the first fantasy series that I read, and I think it's a series that sparked my love for reading, and that is Memorias de Idun, or Memoirs of Idun by Laura Gallego. Now, I will put them somewhere around here. This was a series about a girl and a guy who were transported because of a catastrophe that happened in their lives, were transported to this training center in this magical world called Idun, and where many centuries ago there were dragons, and there were unicorns, and there were flying snakes whose name I forgot, but because I haven't read it for a long time. And I read this series when I was 8, actually. So I read it twice. I read it when I was 8 and I read it when I was 15. I will say, when I was 8, way too young to read it. When I was 15, kind of young, but 8, very much too young. And the reason I got away with it was because my mother didn't realize what I was reading until I was almost done with the third book. It's a trilogy. And I think that's when my mom also started reading fantasy, because she was like, I need to make sure that I know what this kid is, you know, reading, even if it's appropriate. But I will say, if you bypass the inappropriateness of the book, and I mean inappropriate in the sense that there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of gore in some senses, that for a 15-year-old it's fine, but for an 8-year-old, I think it just went all over my head, because I didn't. When I reread the book at 15, I was like, I did not remember that happening in the book. Like, when did this part happen? So definitely wasn't scarred or anything like that, thank God. But that was the first trilogy, the first big book series that I read, and I remember they're like chunky books, and I read them all in a month. Like, I was obsessed with these books. I was obsessed with Jack. I was obsessed with Victoria. I was obsessed with Christian. I wanted all of them to be my best friends, and that's literally how I felt with the book. And I remember feeling like I want this feeling whenever I read, which is why I've always been reading fantasy ever since, if I'm honest with you guys. So that is the first proper memory that I have of proper fantasy books, you know. Obviously I think I read like witch books, and my mom would read me like magic stories of fairies and stuff, but that was the first time that I sat down on my own and read a trilogy of fantasy books and felt like, oh, I feel very seen by these characters. So that was a fantastic book series I would 100% recommend. And then not really long after that, I read Harry Potter. Now, when I read Harry Potter, and this is gonna sound very weird, I read it in Spanish because I am Spanish. I have also read it in French because I thought it'd be easy. I've never read it in English, so I don't know the actual words for some of the Harry Potter books. So I'm just gonna call them the Harry Potter series. But I really loved The Prisoner of Azkaban specifically, and I really enjoyed reading the Harry Potter series as a whole. I think it's a series that I've reread so many times throughout my years, because A, they were home, they were easy to access, but B, they just made me feel so confident and so comfortable. And again, I think I must have been 9 8 or 9 again when I read these. So at that time, obviously, everything that we know about J.K. Rowling hadn't come up yet. Now, personally, I feel a bit weird recommending these books because of the author, but for the sake of the video, I will say those books definitely shaped who I was as a reader. Memories of Idun and Harry Potter series were something that really shaped me. In fact, I used to hide, and I say hide in quotations because I'm pretty sure my parents knew, I used to hide a little lamp, like a little headlamp that I used for hiking underneath my pillow with my book and read. And I remember to this day, I still haven't finished Harry Potter 2 because the basilisk scenes really freaked me out. So I remember very, very vividly, at like 9, going to my parents at like 1 a.m. crying because I was so scared because of the book. And then my parents looking at me and were like, "Were you reading, Mom?" And I was like, no, but I had like a huge mark of like the lamp pushed that because it was pushing through my head. So I'm guessing they didn't know I was reading. So that was always like my go-to series. And again, that's a series that my mom had to read the whole thing. I would like to point out, my mom doesn't like fantasy books. It's not her go-to, but she read all of Harry Potter because I was so voracious about reading them. She did not read the 7th one because she reads slower than I do. And I was like, Mom, listen, I'm gonna read this book and then you can read it, and then if you think it's inappropriate, then we can discuss it, because I just really, really, really wanted to read Harry Potter 7 the moment it came out, and I did. But yeah, those are like the 2 book series from my childhood / teenage years that I'd say really shaped me. I mean, I also read a lot of like vampire-y books like Twilight, and also like lesser known series, but it was those 2 that I would say made me love reading and also turned me into like almost like a reading robot, in which if I wasn't eating, breathing, or I was gonna say doing schoolwork, but I would generally postpone my schoolwork to finish books. So it was because I had such a great introduction, and also because I had great parents who actually allowed me to read. So those 2 book series were 100% the books that shaped me into the kind of reader that I am today. Now, books that I have read in my adulthood are a lot more known, I feel like. I mean, Harry Potter's quite known, but like a lot more mainstream known at this point. And I'm gonna start with one that I don't have here, which is Throne of Glass. I love Throne of Glass so much. I really want to buy the whole freaking box set before the new covers like take over, because it's already hard to find them with the old covers, because I love them so much. I especially love from book 4 onwards. Like, oh, the last book has my heart in a headlock. Like, I love those books so much. I don't know how to explain them without spoiling them, so I'm just gonna go with assassins, magic, political heists. That's what it is about. No, but seriously, it is such a good series, and I find that a lot of people find them a little bit overrated, which is really fair, very, very fair. I would disagree. I think that they're fairly rated, but I can see why other people would think that. I definitely would say though, they get darker as the series progresses, so that's certainly something that I'd say it's good to keep in mind, because Throne of Glass can be a bit dark at the end. And in the spirit of Sarah J. Maas, how can I forget my love, my heart, my everything, ACOTAR. You know, Throne of Glass I love because I feel like the plot twists are so interesting. ACOTAR I love because I feel like the boys are fantastic. Like, the men in this story, top notch. The women in this story, top notch. Like, oh, listen, I just really love the way Sarah J. Maas writes in general. I will say, what's its name? Crescent City does not make the list because I'm not enjoying it as much. I think that I might not be the best judge of it because I don't think I love adult fantasy, and that felt very adulty. But I will say Akatar and Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas are books that I will recommend to everyone, and I will take it personally when they don't like them. Like, my partner has read the first Throne of Glass, which is a big mistake. Read the first, then read the rest. Like, don't stop, because the first and the last have nothing to do with each other. So read the whole series. But he didn't like it, and my friends and I seriously considered canceling the wedding. Not getting married. You don't need to get married to that. So I am very passionate, as you guys can tell. Also, there's more Akatar books coming out, and I cannot wait. So yes, Throne of Glass and Akatar. Those are the last two books that I don't have here that I really wanted to put out there. I feel like a TikToker because I feel like those books are always on TikTok, but oh well. I really like them. Now, let's go to this physical pile of books that I do have here. As always, in no actual order whatsoever, because I don't have time to put them in priority, because I don't have, I don't like picking. These are all my babies. I love them all equally. With Throne of Glass, Akatar, and Memoirs of Idun being my favorite children, I guess. But these ones are really good as well. So, The Atlas 6 by Olivier. Again, I spoke about the second one on my previous video, and I still don't know how to pronounce her name. By Olivier Blake. Olivier, that's what I'm going with. I'm so sorry. But I really love this book series so much. I'm about halfway through the second one. It takes me a little while to get into them because they are a little bit sciencey at some times. But I really enjoy that almost that university mindset of dark academia with magic. I feel like that combination really tickles my fancy, if I'm honest with you guys. I feel like it's just so well done, so beautifully written. The plot twist at the end of this book frustrated me to no end because I had to wait until the second one came out, and so I'm reading that one now. But just for context, this is how much I like them. I've already bought the third one. It comes out in January 2024, so here we are. But I love the idea of like 6 people competing for 5 spots. It almost feels like musical chairs with magic and murder. So I really appreciated that, not gonna lie to y'all. And I really like the way she writes, because she writes from all POVs. So I really appreciate that you don't just get to know what 1 or 2 characters are thinking, but you know what all 6 characters are going through. Which at the same time means that you don't actually really truly know what all 6 characters really honestly want to do. So the plot twists are so much more unbelievable and so much more like neck-breaking, like, oh, what's happening here? So I really enjoyed that about this book. Honestly, The Atlas 6 definitely lives up to the hype for me. The Atlas Paradox, pretty freaking good thus far, if I can say so. Another book that I really love is Circe. Now, I added this here, even though technically it's more like a Greek retelling. It's actually not like it is a Greek retelling, but I added it here because there's a witch, Circe. And I love this book because, first of all, I love any book with a beautiful cover, and this one's gorgeous if you can ignore that it's ripped here. And I also love the nature and behind this book and the nature surrounding. Sorry, I'm looking out my window because there's a massive cloud just kind of slowly making its way towards my house, and it looks like Mordor is coming. Anyways, I really enjoy books in which nature plays such an important setting. As you can tell by the next book that I'm going to talk about, actually. But I also really enjoyed the strong characters in this particular book. I think that the women, especially Circe in this book, is quite terrifying, and rightfully so. In mythology, she was quite terrifying, but also quite powerful and strong and independent, and I really appreciated that. And then you add that with the fact that she's like a witch, and I'm like, heck yeah, write me up. So definitely would recommend Circe. Madeline Miller also wrote The Song of Achilles, which is a great book, but I would not I would recommend Cersei over the Song of Achilles. I feel like it's not something a lot of people would agree with. Sorry for that. Speaking of nature and books about nature, I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Now, I don't want to go into much detail about this book because I'm going to be talking about it a lot more in depth in my quarterly wrap-up in June, so next month probably. But I will just say two things. This book is the first time in a long time that I felt like a fantasy book was low stakes and it felt like a warm hug. Like, listen, this book, not much happened, okay? But it was all like vibes and like landscape and cute little walks in nature with like little fairies, and I really appreciated that. Like, this is the perfect book to read when you don't want to be stressed out and when you just want to fall in love with reading and fall in love with two characters and just be like, I know exactly how this book's gonna end and I cannot wait to see how right I am. So I definitely would recommend this one. Also, its writing style is very original because it's written like an academic journal, so it's written as academic journal entries, so I really appreciated that. It was quite a difference from the classic heroine POV that you have. So I definitely would recommend reading this one as soon as possible, because it is like, the best way that I have of describing it is, imagine you're on a rainy day and you're inside and you have a hot chocolate or a hot coffee, a couple of blankets, comfy clothes, and like a fireplace. That's what this book feels like. So I would 100% recommend reading this one. Also, again, fantasy books just do fantastic covers, if I'm honest with you guys. Like, that is stunning. Another book that I just very recently spoke about, Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm not gonna go in much detail because I did talk about this book quite a bit in my previous video, but I love everything about this book. First of all, I love that it's a standalone. Like, there's no more books that are gonna come from this book, I don't think. But I also love how powerful and powerless it makes you feel. Like, I loved the setting of the academic Oxford dark academia setting. I also hated it at the same time because it was a very strong criticism to it. So I was like, oh, I hate the fact that I know that this is true, that this happened. Perhaps not the magic part, but certainly the racism part definitely happened. Like, you know, cannot deny that one. But I would say Babel just touched my heart and made me think and rethink so much about the way we use language. And then if you add to that the extremely complicated and complex magic system, it's insane. Like, it took me 2/3 of the book to properly understand it, and I think that that was on purpose because it is so complex. And I think that that's what R.F. Kuang was trying to demonstrate. Like, it's hard, you know, language is hard. It shouldn't be easy to translate text. So I definitely, this book, I read it this year and it's certainly become one of my favorite books of all time when it comes to fantasy, because it's just stunning in the way that it's written. Oh, okay, so I have the whole series on my Kindle, but I only have in paperback, well, not paperback, hardback, Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo. Now, I love this book so much. Let me just show you this, right? So this is like the box itself that it comes with. But then, look at that. Ready? How cool is that? And like the paper, this is a collector's edition, right? Like, the paper is stunning. This is a beautiful book. Greg got this for me for my birthday a couple years ago, and I loved it so much. Loved the whole series. Now, I really want to read the Six of Crows as well, because I really want to watch the TV show very sooner rather than later. Haven't gotten around it yet, simply because of time, frankly. But I think that this was such a great book. I love the world building on this one. I thought that this had some of the most entertaining and interesting world buildings I've seen in a little while. I loved how the magic system worked in this one. There's different types of magic and it's very hard to control them. and it's very hierarchical as well, like depending on your magic, you're one thing or the other, and I really appreciated that. I thought it was very interesting. I will say this one a little bit on the juvenile side for me, but at the same time that's not too much of a problem. But if you're looking for something a bit more mature, this might be not the best thing for you to read. I devoured the series and I really want to buy the rest of them. They just don't have them in this fancy schmancy setup, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might just have to accept it and move on. But I would 100% recommend The Shadow and Bone for anyone, and hopefully I get to read Six of Crows soon, get to see a TV show soon, and get to recommend those soon, because I feel like I'm gonna like them a lot. But yeah, and it's just like the whole thing about this book is stunning. Like, it's just gorgeous, man. And another book that I really enjoyed, and this is another very recent read, I got this for my birthday, and that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. I absolutely love this so much. I think that she's a fantastic writer, first of all, but also I think that she created a very interesting world. First of all, the main characters are not in their 20s. They're like older. I don't want to say old because they're not old. They're like in their 40s, but that's like an old version for fantasy books in which your main characters are always between 13 and 25. I feel like that's the age range you have to be a hero in a fantasy book. Here, no, they're in their 40s. They're full-grown women, and it's very interesting to see that kind of character, because they're not making the decisions that you'd expect them to make as heroes. They're making more rational decisions. They have more on their plate than a teenager would do. You know, one of them is literally the president of the witches. So, you know, like there are high stakes in here. Also, parallelly, there is a fantastic commentary on the trans community and how we perceive, in this case, trans women. And I thought it was so interesting because you just don't have that kind of representation in any of the books that I've shared with you. You know, like, you don't have that kind of representation in fantasy. I feel like it's beginning to be more of a thing now, but it's still like not it's not really something that you can expect to see on a everyday time. Like, not every time you will find characters that are not just cis white women or cis white men. So I love Juno Dawson for putting forward a book in which that is literally one of the parts of the plot without it being forced or without it being unfairly written. You know, like, it just felt so natural and so wonderfully written that reading this book was, you know, honestly a privilege. It honestly makes you really rethink the way we see fantasy. So definitely recommend it if you want a high stakes book in which you will also be exposed to more than just a fantasy and a political heist and yada yada yada. Certainly would recommend reading this because it was wonderful. And also, it's just so much fun. Like, the book itself was so much fun. I think I read it in like 3 days because I was just like, I cannot put this down now. And the next one is almost about to come out. I think it comes out in June or July, so I'm hoping I'll get it for my birthday. If I don't, I'll be buying it for myself for my birthday because it's just so good. I think Greg's gonna get it for me. I did ask for it, so I hope he gets it for me. And last, but certainly not least, is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, I love this book so much. It is beautiful. I love so much Kvote, the main character. Fantasy man, you can never pronounce the names, but you still have to read them. But I love the journey aspect of this book. This book is very much a journey. So is the second one. I would love to tell you guys what the third one's about, but I haven't been able to read it yet because it hasn't been published, even though it's been like 10 plus years at this point. We're not bitter. We're not bitter. But I have it in Spanish actually because I read it for the first time in Spanish. And fun fact, my first and my second my first copy of this book and the second book got stolen by someone in my family who refuses to tell me who they are, so I don't know who has them. So I asked for them for my 21st birthday from my friends, and they got them for me, and I'm so happy. So I haven't read this particular copy, but I finally have them back in my bookshelf because I do want to reread them at some point. And I just love any character that goes on any kind of journey. Like, and I'm not talking like a mental journey of becoming a better person. I'm talking like an actual physical journey. I have to get from point A to point B. Love that. Love a good journey. I feel like life is a journey, but also a journey is a journey. So sometimes you just need to get to point A. And then, you know, like, hey, how are we gonna get there? Is it gonna be a truck? Is it gonna be, you know, broomsticks? Is it gonna be a car? Like, how are we gonna do it? What do you want to do? Horses. Most of the time, the answer is horses. They usually take horses. Okay, so spoiler alert: there's horses in this one. There's horses in most of the other ones I showed you. But I just really enjoyed it so much. I think that it's such a fun world, and I don't tend to like books in which the main character is a bit younger. But I love this. Like, I love this so much. I read the first one very quickly. I read the second one equally as quickly, and then I got very angry when I found out that there was never going to be a third one, because at this point there's never going to be a third one. But you know, definitely recommend this, especially if you're a little bit younger, like if you're like 16. I read this very young. I read this at like 14, 15, 16. I cannot remember exactly when, and I loved it so much. And oh my god, how did I forget? There's another. Okay, one second. I'm gonna finish talking about this book, but then I have to talk about another book. But yes, definitely love this so much. I love The Name of the Wind. The other one is called The Fears of a Wise Man. Is that how it translates? I would not know how it translates, but I also have it up there, and I really want to read these at some point when I'm done with, you know, my TBR hellhole over here. So yeah, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. One of my favorite books as a teenager. Oh, there's another one. Oh, I'm getting very overwhelmed. There's like many other books that I must mention now. But yes, this book is fantastic. Now, let's talk about the books that I forgot to put in the pile, but are certainly there. 1 second, please. Okay, here we go. Another book that it's worth mentioning is Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. I've read Inkheart, and then I've read the other two, which are called, ooh, Madre Mia, how were they called? How were you called? God forbid, I don't know. But anyways, this was gifted to me by my godmom in 2008. 2008. To be specific, 17th of August 2008. My birthday is the 12th of August 2008. And they gifted me this one, and then the second and the third one. And this book screwed me over because, listen, first of all, the story itself was wonderful, but I felt very, very seen by Maggie, the main character, who had two weird traits that I, as a 10-year-old, fully adopted. One was reading while like eating her hair, which is terrible, and I did it until my mom told me that I was gonna have a hairball in my stomach one day, and then that stopped it real fast for me. And also, whenever she traveled, she would put all of her books in a box. So we went on a family trip, and I tried to put all of my books in a box, and then I put the box in the suitcase, and then there was no space for my clothes or anything, and my mom was like, why do you mean there's no space? And then she opened my suitcase and was like, why is there a box of books inside your suitcase? So I will not shy away from saying that I tried to be Maggie as a kid. And I failed epically because my mom stopped it very quickly. My mom had 3 kids. My mom did not have time for me having a hairball in my stomach and putting boxes in suitcases. But the story itself, especially of the first book, it is so beautiful. It's such a love story to fathers and daughters all over the world that I just really highly recommend reading this book. I loved it so, so much. Let me have a sip of my coffee. There's so many left. I'm running out of coffee. I'm running out of things to say, so it's fine. And the last book, the one that like kind of showed up on my brain halfway through talking about the Shadow of the Wind, the Name of the Wind, sorry. It's Fairy Oak. The whole of the series of Fairy Oak. Like, how can I forget about Vanilla and Periwinkle? like, how could I couldn't, I don't know. But yes, I love Fairy Oaks books so much because those books talk about the story of two twin fairy sisters, who one has a power of the light and the other one has a power of the darkness. And it is so beautiful. It is such a great story of family and love and sisterly love. And as I said, I have two younger sisters, so I felt very like related to them. But also, I think it's one of the books that bonded me and my best friend Felia the most, because we both love those books so much. I think that we both are kind of considering doing a reread of them. We just cannot find them anywhere because they've discontinued them everywhere. The author is the same author that wrote Witch, like the comic book, which I also really enjoyed actually as a kid. You can tell it was a standard. If you had magic, I liked you. But the beauty of Fairy Oak was that the characters themselves were so cute and so, they looked, when I was young, when I read this when I was like 10, 11, and they looked so brave in my heart that they make me feel like I could do anything. And also, it's very random, but they had ginger hair. So I thought that I was one of the twins. I was like, oh my god, were there triplets? Maybe I'm like one of them. The light, the dark, and the middle part. That was me. So I really enjoyed the Fairy Oak series. I feel like that's a perfect book to kind of, if you have like a young girl in like a 10-year-old or 11-year-old in your family that, you know, they love reading, those book series are certainly something that I think that they would enjoy reading about. Because I did, and like I feel like that it's a book that like I'm very passionate about, and I feel like I don't know if it was like a continuation or like a different thing, but Felia said that they were writing that the author was writing another one, so I'm very excited. Like if that is true, I will be rereading the whole series. I will be buying / bringing them home with me because I have some at my parents' house, and I will be reading them, and then I will be buying the last one, and then I will be reading that as well because it's so exciting. It's like the same as Harry Potter or the same as the Memories of Idun. Like, it is my childhood. Like, those books are the books that I would obsess over and like talk about during dinner time when nobody listened to me because nobody cared, because I had been talking about books for like 65 years at that point. So yeah, I think that those are all of the fantasy books in my life that I love. There's others that I read that I liked a lot, but this was already quite a long video. So imagine if I was talking about all of the fantasy books that I've read in my life. Like, this would take years. Like Molly Moon. Oh, Molly Moon, I love Molly Moon. Anyways, I'm gonna stop now. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if you find any books here that you were thinking of reading, or if I've missed one book that you think has shaped your fantasy journey. Let me know down in the comments so that I can read it. Also, just so you know, I'll probably be redoing this video at some point because there's a ton of fantasy here. Ow. So, you know, I'm probably gonna be redoing this book once I go through everything and I can make up my mind and have new favorite fantasy books. But, you know, until then, we have time. This is it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of video. If you did, like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I will see you guys next week. Bye bye!